Rock Chalk Jayhawk with me, Jayhawk, a podcast brought to you by the Field of 68 Media Network. Make sure you rate, review, and hit the subscribe button on iTunes or anywhere else you get your podcast from. Make sure you also follow the Field of 68 on YouTube. All right, my next guest is a jack of all trades for Kansas Athletics. He played in the Final Four. He's a fundraiser for the Williams Fund and is on your radio every Jayhawk game. And he's also one of two Jayhawks to ever go 5 for 5 3-point land in twice in his career. Welcome to the podcast, Greg Gurley.
Wow, you dug deep on that stat. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Hey, no, it's funny because we kind of share that whole deal when LeGerald broke that record. I think he went 7 for 7.
Right.
And I remember messaging you, and you're like, "Hey, we both went 5 for 5 twice. So did we really go 10 for 10?" I think we got the record still, man.
Yeah, exactly. We deserve
it. So, hey, how's everything been going with you, man?
Oh, just like everybody else, just trying to make the best out of a bad situation. I'm loving that we're playing basketball. It gives everybody such a release, whether you're listening to the games on the radio or you're fortunate enough to come to the games or play it. At least we've got something, and I'm happy that they figured it out. And I think Kansas has done a great job with how they've managed it. We haven't had any cancellations because of what we've done. Obviously, the Tarleton State game was because of them, but you just never know. And it's great to have it back rolling again and talking about it, and just in general, being the holidays. And I'm glad our guys got to go home because it's one of those things that I've been there since I think August, and you miss your family. I mean, you and I were fortunate. You and I were fortunate to be from Kansas City, and it was a 45-minute car ride home if we wanted to do anything, but not the same for all those guys. And so I'm happy they were able to do it. And Bill preached, safety. Make sure even when you're with your family or somebody comes by, keep that mask on. So hopefully we see the positives from that, where the guys all come back healthy, and we got a chance to continue to do well in the Big 12.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's definitely been such a crazy year this year with COVID and the pandemic. So how has your job of broadcasting been affected? Has that been affected to any? What's your new game routine out with the COVID protocols?
It's weird.
Are you picking your mask out to match, or what's the deal with that?
Well, you definitely pick your mask out for comfort, but then also for the good of the broadcast, because some of the masks that fit tighter, you're not putting your microphone under it. The face shield, we have to wear a mask when you're on press row. You can't just wear the shield. So, picking out the mask, that's part of it. You want to have a little separation from your mouth to the mask, because then it'll sound like you got to, some people will say I sound like I have a mouthful of marbles anyway, and a mask wouldn't help. So, as far as our routine, we don't have the same access that we've always had, where, Brian and I are in the testing protocol. So we get tested, but we're not around the team nearly as much. Even when we traveled, it was weird. We went to Fort Myers. They allowed us to go. We booked our own travel. We flew separate. We stayed in a different hotel. We were in Florida with them, and the only time we saw them was at the gym, and that was from a distance. I would talk to Jarence or Q or somebody and stay a ways away, but it would just not the same. But we're making the best out of a bad situation, and the alternative is don't travel and do it from your basement, or do it. We broadcasted the Texas Tech game from the 8th floor, the press box at the football stadium.
Okay.
So, doing it on a laptop, and it was just so. That was weird, and we had the game, the ESPN feed up on the TV. We had the so-called live feed, even though it was a little delayed, on our laptop. And so it was just, there's no other way to put it, but just weird.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because you just answered my next question. If you have you had to do any remote games? And obviously, I bet that was still pretty unique though at the football stadium though.
Yeah, it was just Brian and Steve and I, our engineer, and we made the best of it. It wasn't flawless by any means because you're relying on Texas Tech or wherever
Yeah,
you're playing to send the feed to you, which they were great, but
yeah,
there's
yeah,
always, you're relying on the Wi-Fi to be good. And
yeah.
we all know that at times, sometimes
Get
things
access.
happen and you just,
Yeah,
you don't know. And so there'd be times we didn't get like the crowd noise, and it was just like you were playing in a library, it was just quiet,
yeah,
and it just sounded weird. And then when, if the video went away, like you had to watch the TV broadcast that's about 10 seconds delayed from the radio. So it was just, I don't know,
it's tough, man.
it was odd to say the least.
Hey, it's funny because COVID doesn't. Uh, COVID takes all prisoners, and it's not nice to whether you're a broadcaster, player, referee. Everyone's having to adjust in these times, and obviously from listening to you, man, KU is definitely doing a great job with the safety protocols, at least from what obviously what I've heard from you. So that's a good thing, but you got to mask up, man. I think that's what's going to help us
Right.
continue to play.
Yeah, there's no other way to do it. You got to do it. And then, but then you expose you do a good job and I do a good job and the team does a good job, but who knows what the team you're playing or who knows
Yeah.
what the refs, not saying anything, but you just don't
You
know.
don't know. Yep. Unknown times, man. Hey, so obviously with due to COVID, there are such small crowds now in every gym. How do you think the small crowd do you think it has affected or not affected this KU team?
I don't think it's affected us yet, but I think it could because, I mean, as good as anyone how important Allen Fieldhouse's crowd
Yeah.
is to our success. And, just throwing out a number in the last 18 years since Bill's been here, how many wins could you really say that if the crowd wasn't the way it was, we don't win? And there's at least at a minimum once a year, and that's probably a low estimate. So you're talking almost 20 games over the course of Bill's
Yeah.
career here, or Roy's or whoever's. So now that you don't have that, you got to manufacture your own energy, your own adrenaline, and it's hard because you make a shot and you got 100 people clapping as opposed to everyone just going nuts, and you kind of build off that. So I think it's going to be interesting across the country on, we used to always say the road to a Big 12 title is go 9-0 at home and then go, let's say 5-4 on the road, hopefully 6-3. But, you got to be in that range somewhere to win 14, 15 games. And it's a lot easier getting to 15 if you win 9 at home. Now it's going to be a little different. It didn't see it at all in Virginia because, we shot the ball so well, but it's going to be the games where you're not shooting it well. And what was it, 4 years ago? It's crazy.
Yeah.
We don't win that. You don't win that
And
game.
without the field,
2 minutes and 40 seconds left, down by double digits. You don't win that game without that crowd. So it's going to, something to watch and take a good look at. Nothing you can do about it other than who can do a good enough job manufacturing their own energy.
Yep. And, I spoke with Denny last week, and we're kind of talking about bench energy, how important that is during, COVID times, because you don't have the fans to lean on. So it's almost like for basketball, and we didn't talk about this with Danny, it's almost like volleyball. When a volleyball point is scored, they're
Right.
cheering every play. It's almost like basketball have to take some of that same energy that they do in volleyball and put it on their bench.
No, I have several, obviously over this break watching so many games, and you notice it more at the places that are empty. So like if you go to, Cameron Indoor, they're not allowing fans, or it was a Big 10 game I was watching. It was Maryland and somebody else, Maryland at Wisconsin, and the Maryland bench was so loud and you could hear them
Yeah.
And you could tell their guys were kind of feeding off it, but it's, you can see how loud someone can be. You go back to the Creighton game that got so much press because, Bill noticeably was upset that Creighton was at times louder than our fans. Now, I understand why that was, because there's 2,500 fans there, 400 of which are Creighton fans. If the Creighton fans are cheering, that means that the KU fans are going to be quiet, right? So the 400 fans were pretty loud in an empty arena. And so it almost got amplified, and hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Hopefully that, that they can find a way to not make that happen again.
Right.
If I got to stand at the door with security, I'll do that.
Right.
Let
Right. Yeah, exactly. That was a weird one, but it was a good win.
Yeah, for sure. You got to take those wins any way you can get them. So speaking of this year's team, how do you feel what is your overall impression of them, from a growth standpoint, from when you've seen them at the first game against the national ranked #1 team, Gonzaga? How have you seen them grow since that Gonzaga game?
Well, we've had back-to-back years where we've played great teams in our first game. Last year it was Duke.
Yeah.
We didn't play that great, and we were right there, but we had 28 turnovers. Gonzaga, the story of that game was turnovers. We let them go on a massive run early, kind of took a punch in the mouth, but then came back and tied it up, but then was careless with the ball again. So I'd love another shot at Gonzaga. I think they are the best team in the country. I was really, really impressed with them.
Yeah.
But we didn't play very well and still had a chance in that game. And, they're dealing with their first game jitters as well.
Yeah.
But I think we've valued the ball more. We've become a lot more efficient with every possession. That game, Bill didn't quite have the rotation down yet because he just didn't know. You had, I got to put this guy in for 2 or 3 minutes. And if he doesn't make it, I got to put the next guy. And so now there's a little more fluid. There's a little more rhythm. I think guys have obviously stepped up. I mean, the thing I like most about this team is that we've shown that we can win in multiple ways. You go to Lubbock, you don't play very well. You didn't make shots. The only guy that made shots was Ochai. Everyone else offensively was bad. Christian Brown has 2 points. But he showed that he can do other things to help the team win, and other guys did things that they don't normally do, and Ochai made shots, and we get a really big opening the conference season up with a win on the road. And then we come right back and shoot as good as we can shoot. It was crazy how well we shot the ball against a good defensive team. So I like the fact that we've shown that we can make big shots when we need to. I don't think this team has the firepower to flip a switch because we don't really have that guy. We got good guys. I love Jalen. I love Christian. I love Marca. We got guys, but we don't have like that guy that we can just count on getting a bucket from when it's or we're down by 12. Who's going to go on a run? Jalen's done it, but he hadn't really consistently done it. I'm not saying he can't be that guy, but you were a part of teams that kind of similar to this year. That I say this all the time. Who can remember who the leading scorer was on the national championship team?
Yeah.
And it's hard because there was like 7 guys.
Yeah.
There was like 7 guys that could do it.
Yeah.
I think it was Brandon, but it was
I wouldn't have known right off the top. It would have just been a guess.
And
I could have guessed so many guys.
And that's like saying right now, who's leading our team in scoring this year? It's Christian, it's Jalen, it's Ochai. I think if you ask everybody at the beginning of the year who they thought it would be, I think 80% of the people would probably say David. And he's so my point being, it's a different guy every night. Ochai's probably been the most consistent, but I think it's a good thing. But we can't rely on, okay, you guys aren't shooting well. Ochai is going to give us 25 and 8.
Yeah.
But, he didn't score against Creighton and we still figured it out. So that's what I like about this team.
Yeah. Pretty versatile. It's a lot I think as a coach, it's a lot easier when you don't just have that one guy that, offensive or defensive teams or opponents can just hone in on. Like you said, there's multiple guys on this team. They still, like you said, you talked about a little bit about, and I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about guys that need to step up. You mentioned Ochai and you mentioned Jalen kind of in that boat. I mean, who do you feel besides Jalen? You kind of mentioned Jalen a little bit more. Who do you feel is kind of next as far as that, more so ready to take that torch as far as, all right, need a bucket, I can go out and get it? Who do you think maybe one or two guys can be? Who can that be?
I don't know if it's necessarily a guy that needs to step up and make the bucket. I think the guy that needs to evolve and play better is David. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw when David played well against West Virginia, everything opened up.
Yeah.
Spacing was better. We got a lot of open shots because David was dealing in the paint. He didn't have a great game. He demanded, the other team to play defense against him.
Yep.
He didn't just get it and make his crazy moves and miss it where he's not a threat. He was a threat in that game, and that opened everything up. So I think we know what we're going to get from Jalen, Christian, and Coach and Marcus. So far, we haven't seen what we're going to get on a consistent basis from David. And so for us to make the next step, I don't think it's necessarily a go-to guy. I just think that David has to be there because he's it. Like we don't have other big guys. We've dealt with that before where Landon Lucas was the guy after an injury to Doak, and we did not have a backup. We had Silvio and you had Mitch, but as far as a marquee guy in the middle, David's got to be better. And I don't think that's not me being a jerk or anything. That's probably what he hears from Bill and Norm and Jarence and Kurt every day. And David's a great kid. He gets it. He knows he hasn't played to his potential yet, but it's hard to be a backup like David was to a great player, and then the next year be the guy. And that takes there's a lot of pressure being the guy. And so far he hasn't excelled with that notion, but doesn't mean he won't.
Yeah. I think David's going to, continue to get better. Like you mentioned, it's tough to fill a big void when you milk who can protect the rim. You can just throw it up there. Pretty much anytime he touches it in the paint, he's going to dunk it. I mean, it's just tough to replace a guy that's so athletic like that.
Well, it's hard for Brian and I to not constantly talk about Doak and Dot because there's so many plays in the course of a game where, it used to be you just drive down the middle and just throw it near the rim and he would dunk it. We don't have that anymore. We took that for granted for 4 years because Doak was the best field goal percentage shooter we've ever had because of how athletic he was. So as a broadcaster, it's hard to not say, gosh, if Doak was here or if this was here, but it's in your head. And I gotta do a better job of saying, all right, he ain't here.
Yeah, and he ain't coming back.
He ain't coming back, but it sticks in your head. And I think, he was our security blanket. He was our Ruby, and he was the one that Marcus benefited from Dot and Doak too, because he could take more chances defensively. He could be that ball hawking defender that he could be because he had Dot out front and Doak underneath. And now that he doesn't have that, I'm not saying Marcus isn't having a good year. He's not having the kind of year that I think everyone expected. And that's partly due to not having the supporting cast.
Yeah, for sure. So you talked a little bit about the full potential we're speaking on McCormick. So obviously, if he can become a threat, would you say that even in the West Virginia game opened up so many opportunities for those guards to get open looks? Because if he doesn't figure it out, that means Coach Self's put in a position possibly to go again with that 5-guard look. How much do you see potential-wise KU going deep into the NCAA run in the tournament with 5 guards?
Well, it's going to sound like a dumb comment, but you know it better than anybody. You got to make shots. And so if he goes 5 guards and you don't make shots, then the coach looks pretty dumb. And, it's going to have to be one of those things that Bill's a kind of a coach by feel guy. He's not like just a system guy that says, no, we're playing 4-round-1. I don't, and if David's in foul trouble, we'll put someone in that one position and still play 4. He'll adapt. He'll play 5 guards. I mean, we remember how somewhat reluctant he was to go 4-round-1, let alone 5-round-none. But I think that's, you know, he was able to do that years ago because of Josh Jackson and his versatility, that he could guard your 5-man, your 4-man, or your point guard. And so it was a little easier. And you know, I give these guys a lot of credit. You know, you watch Christian or Ochai or Jalen, they've had to guard postmen, and they've done a good job of it. And I go to practice all the time. They don't work on it a whole lot. That's just guys taking instincts on how they've learned to play and just doing it with effort and position and all that. So for this team to be really, really good and a Final Four contender, it needs to have primarily David in the middle. We're going to play some 5 guards. I get it. But, and I'm obviously a guard. I want 5 guards would be awesome.
Yeah.
And the evolution of basketball has turned to that, because, you know, you watch the NBA now, and a lot of teams don't have a big guy. You know, the Houston Rockets haven't had a big guy for 2 years. And so they've mastered how to do it now. They haven't won a championship, but they've won a lot of ball games. And I'm not saying that we're going to go that route, but you know, it's something that we're going to toy around with. And again, I think that Bill is able to buck the trend. I mean, kind of buck the trend and stay 4-round-1, but then not be stubborn, so stubborn that he won't go to 5 guards.
Yeah, I think, man, and I think you hit that again, hit the nail on the head. I think that's one of the cool things about Coach Self is you could almost say his willingness and openness to change and adapt to situations like this. Because, I mean, I never would have thought he'd be going 4 out, 1 in. And I never, you could have bet me money and say, hey, he's going to play 5 guards. And I'd be like, nah.
Well, welcome to today's way of basketball. I was on a show earlier, and we were talking about how it's not looked at as a bad thing anymore if you 3-on-1 break and the guard fades to the corner and shoots a 3. Like, you and I grew up in a time that if you did that, depending on who your coach was, you're going to get yanked. But that now is a good shot.
It's a good shot.
You know, you were a point guard. What they always tell you to do? Hey, Jeff, go to the free throw line, come to a jump stop, look this way, look that way, and get a layup. And now it's kind of fade this way and no look past the corner for a 3 when it's 3. So, you know, old school be damned. It's just different. Now, it doesn't make it any more of a good, it makes it a good shot if it goes in, obviously, but it's different.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about, you know, because obviously we all know you follow the Jayhawks really close. Can you talk about the leap that Christian Braun took from last year to this year, like what you've seen in your eyes?
Well, the great thing about Christian is that he doesn't seem to have a conscience. He doesn't have a lot. He plays with emotion, but he doesn't have a lot of emotions. Like he's pretty poker faced. He's not afraid. He's got a little, I don't know about anger, but he's got a little attitude.
He does.
And again, we say it all the time. We know Bill as good as anyone. He likes that. He likes a little fight. He likes a little, you know, not talking back to him, but he doesn't mind it. And Christian's like the perfect guy because he's grown a great deal. I mean, I know his parents really well, and throughout his high school career, and then early on last year, they're like, you don't know what you got with Christian. I'm like, well, I think I do. And then, but they were right. He's taken it to another level because he had some games last year that he was great. He can defend. He's a really good rebounder. I think he's an underrated rebounder. How he just goes in there and fights. He's a legit 6'7". I mean, he's a big. He's got some muscle to him. I mean, he's just an athletic, smart, good basketball IQ, and when he's hitting shots, I mean, how can you argue with what he's doing? You know, he used or Jaren's posted something on social media, and it was funny. It was like like a dialogue between him and Christian in that West Virginia game, I think it was, because he missed his first 2 shots, I think, and he said, "Hey, don't be afraid to take the next one." And Christian's line was, "Don't worry, I ain't afraid to take the next." It doesn't bother him, and that's what you gotta. That's the mentality you gotta have, and again, it helps. It helps with the chemistry of him and Jalen and Oach and Marcus, kind of running the 3-man motion out top and knowing where each other's at. I thought it was a cool pass the other day where Jalen kind of got it in the break, and him and Christian kind of made eye contact, threw it behind his back, and hit a shot. And that reminds me of it was deep, yeah, and it reminded me of, to a degree, kind of that 2018 Villanova team that just worked the ball around, took a lot of threes. I mean, that was, Bill said it in a press conference before the Tech game that he wants this team to shoot more threes, which I think you and I would have loved to have played on that team. It's like,
come on,
great,
man.
yes, I'll shoot more. And then they go to Lubbock and didn't really do that. And obviously the ones they did take, they didn't make, but they figured out how to win. But then they took that advice into the West Virginia game with Sheboy and Culver, where they kind of packed it in. And but my point being that they were smart enough to realize that they're in Lubbock and they ain't going to win just jacking threes up. They're going to have to go to the rim the way that Tech plays. But then the next game did what he said, and it worked. So again, the flexibility of the way this team wins is going to be something to watch.
Yeah, it is. And you talked about Christian. I'm gonna get back on this real fast because you talked about his attitude, like that little attitude, that little fire that he kind of has. That whether it's a small chip, a Cheeto, whatever it is on his shoulder, he has the little chip. He almost kind of reminds me, man, because I was roommates with Kirk Hiring for 2 years. But he kind of reminds me of this, like Kirk kind of had this little attitude, was like, man, nobody messing with me out here. Like, I can go. But he wasn't boasty or braggish about it. And he still kind of had that poker face, but he just would tear you apart and wouldn't stop.
It's a good comparison. And, I think where he gets it, if you know his mom and his dad, Lisa, she doesn't take any flack from anybody. And growing up
in Missouri, right?
She was I think an All-American at Missouri. Her brother was a great player at Missouri, Mike Sambodi, who played in the mid 80s. And so he comes from some good blood. His dad was on the JV when KU used to have a JV. Donnie was on that. And then he was a couple years older than me. They ended up going to med school. He's a doctor here in town now. And so he's got basketball in his blood, and he's got a little, like you said, a little fire. And that's a good comparison to Kirk. And I think he's got a little edge too, also being from Johnson County, like I was. I don't think the city necessarily respects, the Blue Valley schools or the Shawnee Mission schools. And so you almost like, oh, he can't play at Kansas, or he can't do that. Like, I think he's kind of, to a degree, and it'd be a good question for him. He probably wouldn't admit it, but coming from Leawood, which isn't exactly a hotbed of high school talent, as far as going to play at a major Division I school, you almost get a little like, all right, I'll prove that I belong. So there's probably some truth to that.
Well, it's definitely working for him. So he needs to definitely keep that up. So you talked about, obviously you are a Kansas kid mentioned earlier, Leawood kid. Did you always want to go to KU?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'd never been to a college basketball game up until probably I went to the 88 Final Four in the national championship game. But, I played all sports. Like, I was baseball, football, basketball, everything. And so it wasn't until I was always a North Carolina fan for some reason. Fair weather fan, they were good in the 80s, Michael Jordan, James Worthy, Sam Perkins, whatever. And so you gravitate to who's really good. And then in 88, they win it. And when you're in Kansas City and they win it, you're like, okay, this is cool. Because I was in 8th grade at that time. And then, I started to have a pretty good high school career. And as like a sophomore in high school, I got like my first call as far as a recruiting call. And, nowadays kids get recruited in 8th grade, but back then it was like, all right, I got a letter from, Roy Williams. That was a big deal. And then my junior year and started kind of liking it. My parents both went to Central Missouri State. So it wasn't like I grew up in a KU household. We didn't really follow anybody. It was just whatever you like. And I was just a big LA Laker fan. All my buddies loved Larry Bird, and I was a Magic Johnson guy. And I argued because the Celtics and the Lakers, that was a big deal. But I was probably more of an NBA fan than I was college.
That's
And
fun.
I was way more of a Magic fan than anybody else. So I don't know. Once they start recruiting you, it's just different. It's 40 minutes down the road, top 5 program. They want you. How do you say no?
Yeah. How do you say? Well, it's funny, Greg, because I kind of feel like you my brother from another mother, man. We share the same 3-point record twice, 5 for 5, twice. But then same thing, man. My parents, man, you say yours obviously grew up in Missouri. Mine grew up in Oklahoma. And we didn't talk about KU at all. I think the first time I really started liking KU was really around like the Adonis Jordan, around your area, man. Around your area.
AD was a junior when I was a freshman. Yeah. So Adonis and Rex and Darren Hancock.
That's the one that got. Hey, it's your squad. Hey, Gurley.
That's right. But my parents didn't push me one way or another. They didn't really care. It wasn't like I didn't grow up hating Missouri or hating Kansas or I was born in the state of Missouri, but my parents, either way, Central Missouri State wasn't exactly, a hotbed of college, whatever. So I don't know. It's different now though, because now you got to kind of show your allegiance early here, at least. My kids are brainwashed just like yours are. Your kids have been to so many more games at Allen Fieldhouse. Like, again, I had never been to a college game. That wasn't like a thing. Yeah. And then you're like, well, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. It's funny. I was like same. I wasn't brainwashed, but my kids, they are brainwashed. They are.
Which is great. I'm so happy that my kids have had the opportunity to travel with us and go to Maui. They're spoiled rotten what they get to do. But your kids get to come in down Fieldhouse and be around the guys. And it's just, and I'm not saying like I had like a bad childhood because I didn't get to do that, but I'm just happy that your kids and my kids get to be around it because it's going to be memories for the rest of their lives.
Forever. Yep. So, hey, you're original. And I can, honestly say I'm an original Roy's boy, man. So, how do you think his coaching style has changed?
Oh, big time. When he first came to Kansas, it was very regimented, and I'm sure it still is. I haven't been to a Coach Williams practice in a while, but I'm assuming it's pretty similar. But it was like, 4:06 to 4:09, we're doing this, and you don't smile, you don't talk, you don't cuss, you make eye contact, and you get a 3-minute water break halfway through practice, and that's it. That's how it works. And so I would imagine that it's changed. I would think he's probably softened just because our world has softened. I don't think you can coach. I don't think you can coach the same way now that you did back then. Like he told us to jump. We said how high. I've never been in the military, but it seemed like as close to a military environment as I would ever be in my life. And so, but that's just what you did.
Yeah.
And you didn't say boo about it. Like if you questioned it, you ain't playing and get the hell out of practice. And so, but I just don't think you can do that anymore. I think kids, you're a coach. Can you handle people different, every certain situation differently, as opposed to, nope, this is how we're doing it. I don't care if you're crying. I don't care if you're thirsty.
Yeah.
This is the way we're doing it. Now you kind of got to massage a little bit and you can treat, some kids are tougher than others, but back then they didn't care. It was like, all right, you're gonna sit there and mope, or you're gonna go play. And if you moped, you didn't play.
That's funny. You talk about the practice times. 4:06, we're done with practice. Like 4:06, not 4:05, 4:06. And it's funny because still to this day, it makes me think Coach Williams was just that much. He was very strategic, because I've still to this day tried to stick to a practice plan and do it like that. Nah, I'm always over a little bit. I'm like, I don't know how he does it.
Well,
My managers get on my, they really get upset. They say, hey, you never stick to the plan. I'm trying.
well, and Bill's completely different because he'll have his sheet of paper and he'll read it and he'll have what he wants, and there'll be 14 minutes on the clock for this, and then it'll start over and there'll be 10, 12 minutes over. But I say that because it's different,
Yeah.
but equally successful. So like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do it that way. Like that's,
Yeah.
and Bill was molded by guys like Eddie Sutton and Leonard Hamilton, and Roy was molded by guys with Dean Smith. And
Yeah.
so you're going to, you're a little different. You're going to take things from Roy, from Bill, and probably mesh them together and how you run your team. But, you're not just a system guy. And again, those two prove that it doesn't matter. It just matters that you win.
Yeah. It's simple.
It's pretty
simple question.
Pretty simple.
Hey, so you played in the Final Four '93, worked for the Williams Fund during the 2012 Final Four, doing my research, man.
Wow, that's good.
And then you called the Final Four game in 2018. Like, how different are all those experiences for you?
Well, I say it all the time. I'm very fortunate because I get to be on the team, the coaches, travel, camaraderie, and then in my other job, go deal with the people that fund our athletic department. And so I get to do two of the coolest jobs. They're very they're different but similar, because all I'm really doing is selling Kansas to our donor base and then trying to paint a picture on the air of the game and use that platform to help me raise more money, in my opinion. So they're different, but what else could a guy ask for? A guy like me, I mean, I don't really have jobs. I mean, I get paid by two people, but it doesn't feel like a job because it's, I don't ever have any visions of going anywhere else. It's not a money thing. It's just, it's enjoyable. I enjoy, that's why this year has sucked so much, because I don't have all the things I just mentioned. I don't have that as much because we're just separate. I mean, I get it, but it's just been weird. So more than anybody, I want stuff back to normal, but on the fundraising side, it's been challenging for everyone. It's not just athletic departments. It's churches, and it's American Cancer Society, you name it. It's charitable giving is taking a massive hit, and people don't, it's hard for some to look at Kansas athletics as a charity, because they see us flying around on private jets and our coaches make millions of dollars and all that, but it truly does fund your scholarship, my scholarship, all the things that go along with academic support, and everything. But people don't look at it that way. So we're going to take a massive hit, and just like everybody. And so we just need to power through it and as quickly as we can get us back to normal, because there's just too many kids that this affects, from environments and backgrounds that wouldn't be able to go to college without Kansas basketball or Kansas track and field or whatever. And that's all over the country. And so it's scary. I hope I hope other schools don't have to cut sports, because every time you cut a sport, that takes away a college education from somebody somewhere. And that's unfortunately going to probably be a reality, but hopefully not.
Yeah. Said hopefully, man, hopefully we'll get this COVID situation, handled here shortly, because obviously, like you said it best, man, it takes away scholarships and opportunities for the youth. And, I think anybody I'm starting to get some grays in my beard, but anybody who is older, we all know the youth is the future, and we got to make sure that we take care of them and get them moving in the right direction. And COVID's just put a damper on that. So you're definitely right on all avenues of that. Hey, so real quick, Greg, favorite all-time game that you played in at KU? What's your favorite all-time game in the field house?
Senior year, only game I ever started, which was Oklahoma State final, senior night. We were tied with Oklahoma State going into that game. Whoever won that game wins the Big 8. And got a start, scored 15 points. Greg Ostertag held Bryant Reeves to 0. Only time in his career he ever had 0. And we won. Had a big party afterwards for all my family and friends. And it was just a cool day. It was a nationally televised game, which, back then all games weren't nationally televised. I mean, nowadays you can watch a KU game from Tokyo or whatever. But back then it was only certain games that were on, and that was one of them. I got knocked out in the first half, knocked out cold, like hitting the head, not on purpose, but I was out middle of the court, and it shows you how much has changed. If that were to happen now, they would have, duct taped your head to the steel board and taken you to the hospital, right? No, I walked back in the locker room. They did the smelling salts or whatever, and did one of these and said, "Okay, you're good." And I went back out and played, and not to toot my own horn, but I have a record. At least I think it's a record. I have the only 5-point play in Allen Fieldhouse. I made a 3, and they fouled me after the shot and gave me a 1-and-1 because there wasn't double bonus back then.
Oh, wow.
So I had a 5-point play in that game against Oklahoma State.
Wow. Because I was about to ask, so I was like, well, you said you had 15 points. So was that one of the 5 for 5 from 3? But
no,
because you had the 5-point play. You had the 5-point.
The 2 5 for 5. One was against North Carolina State in Raleigh. And it was, I remember it well because it was one of the first games, probably the first time my parents ever missed a game on the road. They made every home game, but that was my junior year, and they, for whatever reason, couldn't go. And I had 15 in that game. And then the other one, the 5 for 5 was against Colorado at home, and I had 19. My career high at 19.
Hey, man, that's my career high too, 19.
Hey,
geez, I'm telling you, man, brother from another mother.
This is.
Hey, so you mentioned Big 8. What was the hardest place to play in the Big 8 when you were playing?
I mean, probably Missouri. Hearn Center wasn't the loudest. I would say the loudest and a really difficult place to play was Gallagher, Iowa, which was, Stillwater, and it was only seated 6,000 people.
Yeah.
You never played in old Gallagher, did you? No.
I think maybe my fresh. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so they cut the roof off
yeah.
and built a bubble and doubled it. So now it's 13,000. But Missouri was just the hatred and just you had guys that were being in the business I'm in now, fundraising. That the guys that sit around the court are the ones giving the most money, so are probably successful, smart businessmen, whatever. But those were the guys in Missouri that were the meanest. Like you're looking at these guys like you're probably a doctor or a lawyer or you own a big company and you're nuts. Like they would remember that guy that he'd roll up a black and he'd
fling it out,
throw it up in the air and you're like, dude, you're like a guy like in the community and you just look like a child. But that was the entire Hearn Center. And I'm not dumbing it down because it was, for me, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Fun.
But you would look around like, God, these guys are really mad. Like they want to, like, I don't want to have a flat tire on the way home. They might, they're just mad.
Hey, did the Antlers give you any crap?
Yeah, but me not so much because I didn't play a lot. But it was, they were very creative, and I enjoyed them. I thought they were there was a time that they were really, really funny, and they get you, they call you whatever. Then they kind of took it a little too far, and it got a little more personal, and then they got racist, and it was just, they had to be kind of have their hands slapped. And so I don't think they are the same that they were, but back then to me, they were funny, and I enjoyed it. But I'm kind of I like that type of sarcasm and whatever, but they were creative.
It's funny because, they used to call the dorm room at the towers, other guys would just be like, man, let it go to voicemail. I'd be like, man, let me answer and talk to these guys. Hey, what's up, y'all? Oh, y'all trying to do that? I mean, I thought, like you said, man, I thought it was entertaining, if anything. Like, this is some funny stuff right here.
Well, that was back when, you had, well, I guess you still have a phone in your hotel room, but shut them off. But you'd get a phone call in your hotel room at like 4 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be somebody that we're going to kill you tomorrow or something. You click, and then you'd have to call the front desk, say, we turn the phone off, because there was no cell. I mean, if you wanted to call home or something, you had to use the phone. But now it's not as big a deal. But back then it was like, these dudes are serious.
All right, Greg. Well, hey, we're gonna do some quick fire questions for you, man. Right. If your 93 team played the 08, the 2012, or the 2018 Final Four teams, who would have won?
2008, I'd probably go with the national champions would have beat us. 2012, I'd take 2012 and 2018. I'd take the 93 team. I got to, right? I can't say we'd lose all three of them, right?
Yeah, you can't say that, man. You can't say that.
No.
I'd have to be like, hey, we got to rewind this, and we got to change that up. Make us live. Say,
it'd be pretty arrogant of me to think that you would beat. I mean, the national championship team in 08. I mean, they had everything. So
yeah, they did. Yeah. We talked about them a little earlier too.
Yeah.
All right. So would last year's squad make it to the Final Four if the tournament had been canceled?
Oh yeah, they would have made it. Yeah, because I thought last year's team, they could hang their hat on the defensive end of the floor. They were a really efficient, good offensive team, but not a high-powered offense, because I don't think we shot the ball from the three-point line well enough. But efficiency-wise, we were great.
Yeah.
Because of Doak, and because of, I mean, think about how many points we got at the rim, whether that was Dodd or Doak or Marcus. But when shots weren't falling, we could fall back on our defense. So I mean, think about it. We had two of the best defenders in the country. They each won an award as the nation's best defender. Think about that. That's nuts.
What a top in KU history too,
Yeah. So I think yes, we were playing good at the right time. Like, we didn't play good against Duke in that first game, but we got better. We got beat up at home by Baylor, which Baylor was really, really good. But going to Waco and beating them the way we did in that, what was it, late February or whatever it was, that was a big boy college basketball game.
And that game right there was like when I was like, man, these guys are legit. Like they can. And I knew Baylor was. We all knew how legit Baylor was, and I was like, ooh, this Jayhawk team is.
And Baylor. The key to Baylor to me is they finally made they've dedicated themselves to defense.
Yep.
And they play man to man.
Yeah.
Like, you remember how they'd run that zone. It was
zone,
It was easy.
I loved it. I'm like, I think that was one of my 5 for 5s right there on Baylor.
Right. We would go down to Baylor, and they always had big, long guys, it was Jefferson and Austin, and they could change things. But, we could throw Jamari Traylor in the middle of that zone and he'd pick them apart. Guys would make shots and we'd get out of there with a win. And you'd always scratch your head like, they got athletes, they got big boy players, and they run this terrible zone.
Yeah.
And they're going to win a lot of games. They're going to win 25 games and get beaten the second weekend or whatever, but that never is going to take them to the next level. And so to me, the key to their turnaround is probably not the right word because they've been good.
Yeah.
But the key has been that they're really, really good in man-to-man on the ball defense.
Yep.
And give them credit.
That's the game changer. Makes everything a little bit easier on the offensive end. All right, Greg, if you could have played with one player that played after you at KU, who would it be? One player that played after you.
I would go with, I'm going to give you two, a big guy and a little guy. Sharon Collins, Nick Collison.
Okay. Solid picks.
Who
if I had to pick one after me, it would have been Sharon Collins.
And who would yours have been in the 90s?
Ooh, big man and little guy, big guy, little guy.
Yeah.
All right, little guy. Man, that's tough because I got to pick right now between like two of the guys that got me on it, Rex Walters and Adonis Jordan. So
I'd probably, if I was you, I would say Rex, mainly because you could be Adonis and Rex could be your
true
mate.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Rex, you and AD together may not gel. You and Rex would have.
I would have loved playing with Rex.
Rex played hard, man.
I liked big guy. I mean, who wouldn't want to play with Wilt or play with Danny? But you said 90, so I'm gonna go with. I would have loved to play with Rafe LaFrance, man.
Yeah, I mean, he was ahead of his time because he was a 6'10" two guard. I mean, because back then, big guys didn't
lefty too.
Big guys didn't shoot from the perimeter. They just didn't. I mean, they'd occasionally hit that secondary break free throw line jumper, but Rafe would shoot 22-footer and fadeaways from the corner.
Yep.
And that didn't happen. And he was a scorer.
Yeah. I would have to say we go Rex Walters and Rafe LaFrance, man. Those are my guys.
Both lefties. Yeah.
Both lefties, yeah. My brother was a lefty. Maybe that's something. Yeah. My brother from my mother, not my brother from another mother, which is you.
Right.
Hey, so last one, most memorable moment in broadcasting and playing at KU.
I think the most memorable moment in broadcasting was I look back to that 2018 game in Omaha against Duke, and I'm the ultimate optimist. Think we're going to win every game, and I didn't necessarily go into that game thinking that we were going to win because I thought Duke was that good.
Yeah,
they had Marvin Bagley and Gary Trent Jr. and Duval. I mean, they had first round lineups at every Grayson Allen. I mean, they had guys, and I thought that was as fun of a game to broadcast because we're not the underdog very often.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of Bill's best jobs of coaching. I thought, that was one of my most enjoyable games to call, knowing that you win it and you're going to a Final Four, which all the fanfare that goes along with that. So, and then my most enjoyable game as a player.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, in addition to the Oklahoma State game we already talked about, I would say, the Indiana game in 93, Elite Eight, St. Louis. We were the 2 seed. They were the 1 seed. We beat them, getting ready to go to New Orleans. And so just the fanfare with all that, and we were probably an underdog in that one as well. I had 2 big points, and I look at my points as super pivotal, very important. Can't even pronounce it. Very important in our success of winning that game in the second half. But that game had some memorable moments where Darren Hancock had the under the basket reverse dunk, and then my guy Calvin Rayford
That was my guy right there.
Picked Damon Bailey at half court. Calvin's about 5'6", and just kind of ran in between Damon's legs, picked him, got a layup, and that kind of got us going. And so that's probably my that was fun. That was a fun game.
Well, that's good. Well, that's it for today, Jayhawk Nation. Thanks for listening in to Rock Chalk Jayhawk with me, Jayhawk, a podcast brought to you by the Field of 68 Media Network. Make sure you rate, review, and hit the subscribe button on iTunes or anywhere you get your iTunes or your podcast from. Greg, appreciate it, man. Good luck the rest of the season, man. And I truly enjoy listening to you do all your broadcasts, man, because you do it with so much passion, man.
Well, thanks, man. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate you having me on. Have a healthy and happy New Year.
You too, man. Appreciate you, man. Rock Chalk, baby.
Rock Chalk.